Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to be going over the topic of how much protein you should be looking to consume at each individual meal. And if you saw my last video, you know that I went through the science of the topic of how much protein you should be consuming each day over the course of a 24-hour period. However, this topic is slightly different because, for example, if you work out that your protein requirements each day are 200 grams as an easy simple example, technically you could consume 200 grams in one meal and not consume any protein for all of your other meals in the day, if there are any, and you still reach that 200 gram per day recommendation. However, obviously a follow-on question to this is whether distributing your protein intake out more evenly throughout the day, so for example, is 2 meals with 100 grams of protein each superior to 200 grams of protein in one meal, or is 4 meals of 50 grams superior to 2 meals of 100 grams? Obviously the question leads on to many more questions. And the overarching question is whether there is a maximum response to one meal of protein. So this is a very common and it's a popular question within the world of sport nutrition. It's still one that's being debated by the top nutrition researchers in the field, and it definitely splits opinion, and I'll try to give my most non-biased opinion possible. Now, if you want to dig deeper on more topics such as this, I recommend clicking on the link below and checking out the Matchfit Nutrition Academy, because we currently have a really good deal on there that you won't find on our website. Now, in terms of this topic, what I can say is that over the last sort of 5 years, there has been an accepted opinion that there is a maximum amount of protein you can have in a singular meal that will maximize responses within muscle tissue specifically, in terms of optimizing muscle protein synthesis, so the amount of muscle proteins that are being created from the protein that you're consuming, and also maximizing or inhibiting muscle protein breakdown, so the amount of your muscle tissue that you're actually stopping being broken down from consuming dietary protein. Now, the maximum limit in young, healthy, active individuals at each meal seems to be approximately 40 grams. So, dependent on body weight and the amount of muscle mass you have, this is likely going to fluctuate a little bit, but on average, in active populations, roughly 40 grams of protein is going to maximize muscular responses to a meal. And it's also worth keeping in mind that we know that when we analyze muscle tissue, the effect that protein has on muscle tissue, it only lasts for a certain amount of time. And so, for example, if you consume 40 grams of protein at one meal, it only has an effect on increasing muscle protein synthesis or reducing breakdown for around 3 hours after you've consumed that meal. Even if you consume more protein, 50, 60, 70 grams, that doesn't mean you're going to get more of a benefit to your muscle tissue as compared to 40 grams. After that 3 hour period, your effect in terms of muscular responses is going to reduce down to baseline where you were before you had that meal. Now, what this meant, and it has meant for the last 5 years, is that sports nutritionists went out and they advised everyone they worked with to look to consume 40 grams of protein at each meal and to consume a meal every 3 to 4 hours. What this meant is that over the course of a 24-hour period, the athlete was basically getting the maximum anabolic response to the protein they were consuming, and therefore, in theory, they were going to benefit their muscle recovery, muscle adaptation, you name it. This still holds truth today. However, we now know slightly more about what we once thought about what most benefits athletes. And the main point with this is that we now know that muscle tissue and muscle responses aren't all that should be looked at when analysing what benefits an athlete. And this seems quite simple. For example, if you're talking about injury prevention, we know that we really want to be making sure that connective tissue remains really healthy, that we're resynthesizing collagen within our connective tissue when we damage it and degrade it after an intense training session. You know, this doesn't come under the category of muscle, but it's still extremely important for an athlete. So just because 40 grams of protein has a maximum effect within muscle tissue doesn't necessarily mean it has a maximum effect in terms of the entire body. And when we're talking about athletes now, we should really be talking about the effect on the entire body, not just muscle tissue specifically. So maybe there is a benefit to consuming 50 grams, 60 grams of protein at each meal to make sure we're not only maximising muscular responses, but we're maximising responses in other tissues as well, such as connective tissue, or even in terms of proteins that are found within the gut that aid absorption through the intestinal wall. Gut health is very important for athletes as well. Many people suffer from gut issues. So there's a lot of different questions that obviously come with this, and you know, really trying to give practical recommendations considering all this is difficult. What I would say is that as a safe bet, as a safe recommendation for you, I would make sure that you're consuming 40 grams of protein as a minimum at each meal, and you should be roughly consuming, to ensure maximum responses, you should be roughly consuming at least 3 meals per day that have this minimum of 40 grams of protein per day. Is there a benefit to consuming and increasing your meal frequency to 4 meals, 5 meals? Potentially, we don't yet know. Is it going to be detrimental? Probably not, or definitely not. So if you can realistically, conveniently fit 4 or 5 meals into your day, you know, every few hours, then I'd say go ahead and do that. But I wouldn't overthink it too much, and I'd probably use 3 meals as a minimum amount that you want per day if you're looking to maximise responses in muscle tissue and other tissues. So keep in mind that daily protein intake as a total is the most important, most overriding factor, and it is more important than meal frequency. But if you are reaching that daily protein recommendation, and you're looking to go one step further and look at meal frequency, then 40 grams of protein at a minimum for each meal, and 3 meals as a minimum over the course of a day, ideally evenly spread, so every 4 to 5 hours, let's say. If you can go more than this, potentially better. It's worth experimenting with, but don't overthink it too much. Again, if you want to go deeper on topics such as this, I'd recommend checking out the Matchfit Nutrition Academy. We currently have a deal on the Matchfit Nutrition Academy that you won't find on our website, so I highly recommend checking that out. If you enjoyed the video, please share it with anyone that you think it might help, and I'll catch you guys next time.